Let me ask you something. How many times this month have you opened your refrigerator, looked at yesterday's leftovers, put them in the microwave, pressed a button, and felt good knowing you were saving money, avoiding waste, and making life a little easier? Most of us do it without thinking. In fact, millions of people do it every single day. And why wouldn't they? Leftovers are practical, they're convenient, they're economical, they're part of normal life. But what if I told you that some of the biggest food safety mistakes don't happen when food is being cooked? They happen afterward, in the refrigerator, on the kitchen counter, and during reheating. Not because reheated food is automatically dangerous. Most reheated food is perfectly safe when handled correctly. The problem is that certain foods change in ways many people never consider. Some become breeding grounds for bacteria when cooled improperly. Others lose nutritional value rapidly. And some develop compounds that food scientists have spent decades studying because of their potential effects on long-term health. What concerns me is that many older adults have followed the same kitchen habits for 30 or 40 years without anyone ever explaining what actually happens inside food after it has been cooked. I've spoken with people who carefully watched their cholesterol, carefully monitored their blood pressure, tried their best to eat healthy meals, yet unknowingly made simple food storage mistakes every week. Not because they were careless, because nobody ever taught them differently. Today we're going to talk about 4 foods that deserve special attention when it comes to reheating. Not myths, not internet rumors, not scare tactics. We're going to discuss what food safety experts, microbiologists, and nutrition researchers have learned about these foods and why proper storage and reheating methods matter. And I strongly encourage you to stay until the end, because the final food on today's list sits in millions of refrigerators right now. Most families eat it several times every week, and surprisingly few people know the correct way to handle it safely. Before we begin, let me ask you a quick question. What food do you reheat most often? Rice, soup, chicken, pasta? Leave your answer in the comments below. I'm always interested in seeing which kitchen habits are most common among our viewers. Now, before we discuss specific foods, let's understand something important. Heat itself is not the enemy. Cooking food properly is one of the greatest advances in human health. The issue is what happens after food cools down. Bacteria naturally exist everywhere around us. Most are harmless, some are beneficial, and a few can become problematic when food is stored improperly. Temperature plays a huge role. Certain temperature ranges allow bacteria to multiply rapidly. Others slow them down dramatically. That's why food safety guidelines place such emphasis on refrigeration, storage time, and reheating temperature. When leftovers are handled correctly, risk remains low. When shortcuts become routine, risk gradually increases. And that brings us to the first food on today's list: processed meats. Bacon, sausages, hot dogs, ham, deli meats. These foods are already different from fresh meat because they undergo curing, smoking, preservation, or additional processing before reaching your kitchen. Researchers have studied processed meats extensively for decades. One reason is the presence of preservatives and compounds formed during processing and high-temperature cooking. The problem becomes greater when these foods are repeatedly exposed to high heat. Many people cook them, cool them, store them, then fry or microwave them aggressively the next day. The higher the temperature, the greater the chemical changes occurring inside the food. That doesn't mean eating leftover bacon once will suddenly cause disease. Health rarely works that way. The concern is cumulative exposure over many years. Repeated habits, repeated thousands of times. For that reason, food experts often recommend limiting processed meats overall and avoiding unnecessary repeated high-temperature cooking whenever possible. If you do save leftovers, gentle reheating methods are generally preferable to intense frying or scorching. And surprisingly, the second food isn't meat at all. In fact, Most people consider it one of the healthiest foods in the supermarket. Spinach surprises almost everyone when it appears on lists like this. After all, spinach has earned its reputation as a healthy food for good reason. It contains vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and plant compounds associated with numerous health benefits. The problem isn't spinach itself. The problem is how it is handled after cooking. Many people prepare large portions. They cook enough for several meals. The leftovers spend hours cooling, then days inside the refrigerator before eventually being reheated. What most people never consider is that food continues changing after it leaves the stove. Enzymes remain active. Chemical reactions continue. Tiny shifts occur within the food long after dinner has ended. Does that make reheated spinach dangerous? Not necessarily. But nutrition scientists have observed that repeated heating can significantly reduce some of the very nutrients people are trying to obtain from vegetables in the first place. Vitamin C is particularly sensitive to heat. Some antioxidants decline with repeated cooking cycles. Texture changes, flavor changes, and nutritional value can gradually diminish. For that reason, many nutrition professionals suggest preparing vegetables in portions that can be eaten within a shorter period of time. If leftovers remain, using them cold in salads or grain balls may help preserve more of their nutritional qualities compared with repeated reheating. Now let's move to a food category found in nearly every kitchen: cooking oils. This topic becomes especially important because most people focus entirely on the food being cooked while paying very little attention to the oil itself. Oil changes dramatically when exposed to high temperatures. The first heating process already creates chemical alterations. When the same oil is heated again and again, those changes continue accumulating. Anyone who has reused frying oil has probably noticed this. The smell changes, the color darkens, the texture becomes different. Those visible changes are signs of chemical transformation occurring within the oil. Food scientists have spent years studying compounds formed during repeated heating. Some of these compounds are associated with increased oxidative stress inside the body. Oxidative stress is not a disease itself, but researchers believe it may contribute to many age-related health problems when exposure becomes excessive over long periods. That is why many experts recommend minimizing repeated reuse of cooking oils whenever possible. Fresh oil generally produces fewer degradation products than oil that has already undergone multiple heating cycles. The same principle applies to fried leftovers. Each additional heating cycle creates another opportunity for further chemical change. Again, we're not talking about occasional exposure. We're talking about habits repeated week after week, year after year. And now we come to the food that probably appears most frequently in refrigerators around the world: rice. If I asked people which leftover food worries them most, many would probably answer meat. Very few would say rice. Yet food safety organizations have issued guidance about rice for decades. The reason involves a naturally occurring bacterium called Bacillus cereus. The spores of this bacterium can survive normal cooking temperatures. Cooking destroys active bacteria, but not necessarily every spore. If cooked rice remains at room temperature for extended periods, those spores may become active and begin multiplying. During that process, toxins can be produced. The important detail is that reheating may kill bacteria, but does not always eliminate toxins that were already formed. That distinction matters enormously, because many people assume that if food becomes hot again, every potential problem disappears. Unfortunately, biology doesn't always work that way. This is why food safety experts emphasize rapid cooling and proper refrigeration. The sooner cooked rice reaches refrigerator temperature, the less opportunity bacteria have to multiply. Simple habits make a significant difference. Store leftovers promptly. Use shallow containers when possible. Avoid leaving cooked rice sitting out for several hours. And consume refrigerated leftovers within recommended time frames. None of these steps are complicated, yet they dramatically reduce risk. What fascinates me is that all four foods we discussed today share a common lesson. The biggest danger is rarely the food itself. It's the assumption that once something is cooked, it can be treated carelessly afterward. Food safety doesn't end when dinner is served. In many ways, that's where responsibility begins. The refrigerator is not a time machine. It slows change. It does not stop it. Every leftover has a lifespan. Every food responds differently to storage. And understanding those differences allows us to make smarter choices without becoming fearful of every meal. I don't want you leaving today's discussion afraid of leftovers. That isn't the goal. The goal is awareness. Awareness helps us avoid unnecessary risks. Awareness helps us preserve nutritional quality. And awareness allows us to continue enjoying food while making decisions that support long-term health. The good news is that most food-related risks are highly preventable. They don't require expensive products. They don't require complicated diets. They simply require a few better habits practiced consistently over time. And often, those small habits create benefits far greater than people expect. Before we finish, tell me something in the comments. Which food surprised you the most today? Was it spinach, the cooking oils, processed meats, or rice? I'm always interested to see which kitchen habit people plan to change first. Because sometimes, a simple change made this week becomes a healthier routine that lasts for years. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.